Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah.
Dude, did you listen to that Matt Cain Super Rare Spaces yesterday?
I did, man. Seems like we got to talk about that, especially since it's timely and it'll drop tonight and everything.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was super interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we're also recording, so if we want to kind of just get right into it, because that's definitely like the topic of the day, the week. Hopefully longer than that. Hopefully it keeps people talking and people's memories expand beyond like the 1 week buffer that folks normally have. So did you listen to the whole thing, or like I came in probably a little over halfway through, was listening, and then especially when Pindar jumped on the stage, I heard that as well. But then shortly after that, I needed to bounce for another call, so I didn't get to listen to the final conclusion or anything like that. But I imagine it was just as spicy as what I was listening to, where Matt was unpacking the reason behind the contractual obligations released to rare pass holders, digging at and critiquing what Super Rare has been doing, especially as it relates to how they were able to include artists and how they distributed funds and all that stuff to people involved, but also to like the meta of these weird passes that people purchase for like monthly airdrops of art, whatever. And then just the expectations of collectors on artists, I guess. Like there's a whole lot that he was critiquing. And I think it's an interesting performance piece in addition, because he definitely adopted this Andy Kaufman-esque approach, because he also like name dropped Andy Kaufman, like referencing him. So I'm like, I wish he wouldn't like directly reference that. Andy Kaufman never said he was Andy Kaufman. He just was Andy Kaufman. But then Pindar kind of put a voice to all the collectors that were just like, I bought a rare pass specifically so I could collect your art, because your art is so unapproachable on the secondary for the most part, either price-wise or just collectors not listing anything. And I don't know if Pindar is in on the act. There's like conspiracy theories on that. But Pindar, in my interactions with him, has been very straight up and doesn't seem to be one to feign anger or disappointment, which he very, very visibly was yesterday. And had also called out the fact that Matt Cain, for the critique that Matt Cain levied at Super Rare, is maybe not always being the best at promoting art on the platform, et cetera, et cetera. Pindar is like, Matt, you've been like the poster child of what it looks like to be promoted and have collections contextualized by the Super Rare team over and above everything else that's happened there. So it was an interesting full-bodied experience as an outsider, as a non-rare art pass holder, but as a Matt Cain collector. Curious your take.
So help me out with some context, man, because I am a bit on the outside. I'm generally a fan of Super Rare. I do believe they've done some things over the course of the years that's like sort of contrary to their like original mantra or whatever, but none of it has been like so egregious to have like what seems like to me I've like really lost the support of like the larger community and everything. So the way these rare passes work is you pass and then you're guaranteed to get a drip of dope art from dope artists as time goes on. Is that basically how it works?
Yeah. So at the beginning of the year, they had that big rare pass sale, raised a ton of funds, and then any rare pass holder was entitled to like the monthly airdrops with like a pretty crazy lineup of artists that they had organized throughout the year. Combination of one of 250 editions, like the art block style, where there's 250 total outputs. All of them are unique. So like Pindar van Arman, Sarah Zucker, and a number of other artists participated in that. Then like there's folks like Sam Spratt that had like one of ones that were up for offer, and were like Rare Pass holders were randomly selected for that. But yeah, it's like on a monthly basis, and it was sold as an easier way to get exposure to some of the more popular artists and exciting artists of recent times.
Yeah. Cool. So I'm, like I said, man, I'm like one of these people who's like generally priced out of Matt Cain. So, most of these things are off my radar, and some of these things I've missed, like Gazers, which was not like out of my price range upon mint price and everything. And I assumed that I was. And anyway, there's a lot of stories like that. So that's what I assumed.
Everyone's got a Gazer story.
Oh, dude, we won't go there. So anyway, man, I'm a fan of Matt Cain. We've all known Matt for a long time, and so that was the sense that I got when I was like listening to the Twitter Spaces, which was just like all over the place and popped up on my radar. Brookhawk actually was like asked me what I thought about it and everything, and so was giving it a listen, and I don't know, man, as like someone who is like a fan of like disruption in general, like I don't, and also, man, I feel like I have sort of an interesting like perspective on this that I didn't have like a year ago, since I'm like been sort of dabbling in the art scene, right? And I'm like not doing Matt Cain numbers, but people are scooping up my editions, and I've got my shit in like several hundred people's hands at this point, and released my own project and everything. So I have like some insight into the concept or the context of like how these collectors feel, man. And I'm just like, damn, dude, it's like gotta be really frustrating to be an artist and not have the freedom to just release like whatever the fuck you want, because that's sort of what I've been doing and like this whole time. And I think I benefit from not having Matt Cain type of expectations revolving like price and everything. I'm dropping a lot of my shit on 01, and people dig it. And I've done like some manifold drops that, for like, pretty low entry points and everything. And so I think expectations are accordingly low for my art, which is fine. I don't consider myself someone as like Matt Cain's like caliber as an artist. But man, like the burden that comes with having established yourself as that, and then not liking something and just wanting to make a statement, and that is your art surrounding that statement, whether you just whipped it up in 10 seconds or 10 years or whatever. Like, I sort of feel for that side of the argument, because I'm like, I feel like that's very like it must feel. I'm acting like I'm Matt Cain. Like it's very stifling as an artist, man. Nobody does this shit to me, but I'm like, shit, man. If I like put out something and everyone was like, this is so much worse or so much lower effort or like whatever, and I'm just like, whatever. This is how I felt. This is the statement I wanted to make, and like this is my art surrounding that, which is I think what he was generally getting at is my takeaway. Forgive me if I'm wrong. It's got to be tough, man, and that I know there's a lot of that goes on within the space, but to sort of like hear that and be able to frame it with like, wow, I'm sort of like in that. I got a foot in that door as well, but don't have that kind of shit that like comes along with it and everything. And I'm like, man, it's just sort of crazy that is a point where it gets to where like, and Matt was like touching on some of that, where you're like, subject to a lot of pressure by collectors and like outside influence on like every single thing you put out and like every single place and everything. And I'm like, shit, man, I'm glad I have no expectations on my shit.
Yeah. The expectations is a huge point. And it seems like with this release, which again, Matt keeps saying is Act 1, and it's like immutably written in the metadata as being Act 1. Like, I guess cryptically referencing that there may be subsequent acts to come related to this.
Act 2 is Matt's second rage quit of like his next thing. He's like really
the expectation part and the way that Matt released it, how he released it, like what he used to create the work in the collection. He used that expectation as an element in the whole performance because he so seriously subverted those expectations, and it's created this awkwardly weird and exciting moment around it, which I don't know, like art doesn't ever need to be exciting. It doesn't need to be anything other than whatever it actually is and what the artist originally intended. But when you subvert expectations like that, art gets really fucking exciting. Like for some in like an awkwardly frustrating way, and others like a popcorn, like watching things burn way. You know what I mean? Like it's fucking crazy. And there is some, I don't know who said it throughout or during the spaces, but it rings really true. And it's like a lot of people really love the idea of performance art until the performance art arrives. And then people are like, what the fuck is this? And they lose their shit. Or some people are like, oh my goodness, this is a master class in performance art, blah, blah, blah. And people get like all erudite or whatever. But it's all just, if you zoom out further and you just see all the sides, it's just fucking exciting.
Well, see, so I'll throw my conspiracy theory at you, and I say this with love, and that I love Matt and all this, and you know that's well out there. But I'm like, dude, this is the benefit that Matt Cain has of being Matt Cain, right? So let's just like put this in the context of like Matt Cain just like really didn't like what was going on with this project. Was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna make some low effort like AI art, put it out there, and be done with this because fuck them, and that was all there is to it. But because he's Matt Cain, people are like, this is subversive performance art. This is, you know what I mean? And like all this shit gets like piled onto it where like, you know, you get like, you know, average Joe out there doing something like this, and it just gets sort of like washed up in the landscape of like every other AI art piece out there and everything. But this is, again, man, the context and like the weird effect that like your reputation and collectors have on this is like, you know, someone else puts out a low effort fuck you piece and nobody gives a shit, but Matt Cain does it for the exact same intention, the exact same reason, and then suddenly he's like the second coming of Andy Kaufman and some shit, and maybe he is, man, but I don't know, man. I feel like people are making a bigger deal out of it than is necessary. Then again, I don't have like, you know, 100K dumped into Matt Cain pieces and expecting like, you know, animatronics every time to come out either. So it's weird, man. I feel like it's really weird when like this thing that like, you know, digital art and the internet and blockchain and the combination of all this shit that has enabled, you know, collectors to slide into your DMs and be like, what the fuck are you doing in like real time? Like definitely adds an interesting, you know, social dynamic to all this art that's being created. And, you know, there's a lot of artists, and we don't even have to name names, man. A lot of people have been in it for a long time. Like, you know, I'm sure can conjure up, you know, some people they know, or we all know that, you know, have definitely, you know, sort of found their thing that works and, you know, their thing that their collectors like. And that is what they do now. They're, you know, you can consider them an artist, and they certainly are in like a lot of respects, but they're churning out things for their collectors, not necessarily like what started them in this. And then there's a lot of people who have like stayed really true to, you know, sort of experimentation and doing art that they like, you know, speaks to them. And I feel like that doesn't work as well across the board. Like some people find success with that, but it's just a really interesting dynamic when you got so much noise and so many voices and so many opinions in the room of something that inherently someone needs and should have, like, you know, true creative liberty to make. But then people are like, yo, my bags, dude.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on the point of like a more readily familiar style that some artists have and that collectors have eaten up, and obviously like has hit the mark with collectors. But like even with Matt Cain, like you zoom out and you dig into like his artistic journey, like the dude had been doing physicals previously, right? Like the Matt Cain we know today is an evolution that's taken like over a decade, right? Like from when he started to first put together his digital tools that he uses to make most of the art that we recognize as Matt Cain, like going back to One of Us, to Bitcoin volatility, right place, right time, to gazers, right? But that's just like a snapshot of his artistic journey. The dude has been kind of going all over the place across different mediums. And that's Matt Cain, that individual that's constantly changing, evolving, right? It just, a lot of collectors just kind of got locked into the most recent couple of years of his artistic practice. And that's on collectors too, for like not understanding that or getting upset because there's a deviation, right? The mindset of collectors generally should be, like, for their own sanity, the open mind that they're collecting art and they're patrons of art so that the artist can continue to be an artist, and like whatever that means for the artist. Like, they got full fucking scope to do whatever they want to do, right? And most collectors don't have that mindset for very understandable reasons, right? Like, you like something, you buy it. Like, there's not a lot of thought some people put into what they collect outside of just visually vibing with something. So this conversation opens up all these threads of like what it means to be a collector, like what is an optimal mindset, like what's suboptimal, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, and people were mentioning this in Twitter earlier too, it's like, well, at least we're talking about shit like this as opposed to like floor prices or like any other bullshit, right? This is conversation that no matter where you start and what you focus on to talk about, it always goes back to the art and the artist, which the more we can talk about this shit, the better. And you can see that something as seemingly like esoteric or mundane as this and the digital art side of things can just like take the whole space over by storm. And it's testament to the power of these sorts of conversations. And again, conversations that even in recent memory, Matt has been at the center of, like going back to like the whole royalty debate, like him and Sparrow and everyone on Sen and the digital arts side of things and all the marketplaces that came together to rally around the 10% standard that was not a standard before, and before like OpenSea fucked shit up terribly. Like Matt was at the center of that and was a loud leading voice there. So again, like he's very much like Matt Cain as of late and as of old, in my personal opinion, in this approach here. But yeah, I put a pin in that. Like I just, the rare pass, that whole like meta is just, I don't know, had never been particularly a fan of. And I had seen like from the outside, the rare pass itself is just like a fundraising vehicle to keep Super Rare afloat. Cause I mean, they had like another 50% layoff after a 50% layoff at the beginning of the year, and like a resizing at the end of 2022, from what I remember. And I thought that most artists were like, oh, we're just going to participate in here so we can give back to Super Rare for everything that they've kind of provided us in terms of a platform and the history and legacy, blah, blah, blah. But anyway.
Yeah, I kind of, so I agree, man, that this is like a better conversation to be had, but I also feel like it's rooted in floor prices, because if it wasn't like at some level related to floor prices with some of these collectors, no one would give a shit that Matt just like didn't like this thing and we would just move on. Like similar to, you know, if I made like a fuck you piece and I just dropped it on 01 and I posted it and I'm like, hey, fuck you, like I really didn't like this thing, and people would be like, it's Rizzle doesn't like this thing, and everyone would just move on. But like again, man, because there's no floor prices and no expectations coming into it, I feel like inherently this conversation is like sort of rooted in price because people and maybe it's not, man. I mean, maybe these are all super fans of Matt Cain who are hoping for some like highly nuanced thing of his that similar to ones that he's put out lately, which are obviously incredible, but I don't know, man. I like the Matt Cain fuck you piece, man. I feel like they're kind of rare, right? Like they don't come out that much these days, and I've always liked that about Matt Cain, that he's not afraid to rock the boat, which is right along line of what you said, man. This is sort of like consistent with him not sort of playing by people's rules, or not being afraid to be the one to stand up and take a stance on something, whether you agree with him or not. Although I think the royalty situation everyone was pretty much aligned with. So yeah, man, I like it. I think, as a non-Matt Cain bag holder, because I missed gazers. Although I think if I had a gazer, I still wouldn't give a shit. I would still be happy that I got a gazer. God damn it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just exciting to be a part of the journey nonetheless. Like, it's awesome. Like, I have a gazer. I have a snapshot of the right place, right time, the Bitcoin volatility piece as well, and physical. And it's exciting to see Matt continue to be Matt, like, super authentically. And I don't, like, the level that he's at, like, he is his own marketplace. He can go and release anywhere he wants. He could just build his own marketplace and release there for the rest of his life and totally be fine. And it's the weight of that he kind of puts behind his art, whether it's just visual, digital, or performance. And it makes waves. And it's really fucking cool to see that. And while not every artist has the same heft to make as big a waves, like, artists have the ability to do that if they want to, if they're, like, so driven to, right? And I think that's exciting. Like, that's just, you never know what's going to happen. It keeps everyone on their toes. Like, if everything was just status quo, always buttoned up, super professional, shirt and tie, like, that's not art that everyone likes. That's not art that's exciting, that gets the people talking, right? So you need this from time to time, at least, if not all the time.
Dude, 100%, man. I feel like that's like a misconception that, like, people have, where you buy into an artist or artwork, and there's going to be this, like, methodical, like, strategic release of stuff over time that's gonna build upon it and everything. And, like, you gotta think, man, like, not to make, like, a broad generalization, but I guess I am a little bit, but, like, anyone who's, like, devoted themselves to making a full-time living making art, like, is generally an inherently, like, risk-taking individual who doesn't play by conventional rules. And again, making a generalization, but I feel like once you step into this territory, you're sort of, like, along for the ride with the artist, and you take what you get, and you like it or you don't. But an artist is an artist, and you got to let them sort of or you got to sort of approach them with the understanding that you're appreciating them doing their thing when you're buying their art, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, totally. And just to be clear too, like, it is cool. It is also okay. And, like, there are a lot of collectors that do appreciate the more kind of, like, expectable, regular, like, buttoned up, professional approach.
Yes, I'm not knocking that either, because there's a place for that as well.
Yeah, it's cool that we're now seeing so many different flavors of artists emerge and be accepted and to be lauded, right? And it's going to be polarizing. Like, I don't know who said this, but you really haven't truly made it until you have haters and people that are just like, that is so fucking not the right way, or stupid, or bad. Like, that just continues to get people talking about you. And it's so cool now that artists are empowered to be more authentically who they are in this whole space of so many different approaches that are showing themselves to be, like, viable strategies to be an artist and to be a successful professional artist as well. So yeah, man, good times, good shit.
Yeah, dude. I feel like artists are, like, the worst people to, like openly critique, man. Like, if you don't like their art, you shut the fuck up. And again, man, I'm just sort of, like, rattling off the top of my head, but I'm like, I think of someone like Stella Bell, man. You cross her. She is very freely, independently herself and her artist, and does whatever the fuck she wants. And if you have, like, give her an earful publicly, you're, like, liable to be the subject of her next piece. And I don't want to be that. And like same thing with like, you know, eclectic method, you know, I know every now and again catches some flack for his samples and everything, and you know, he can like carve people up in like 30 seconds, man. Like there are just like some people like you know, and you know, Matt Cain I don't think is gonna start making, you know, haterade pieces about his you know, his haters or anything, but you know, I don't know. I feel very strongly, you know, I guess along the lines, I'm sure Stella Bell's listening. She would co-sign that, you know, the people who are in the business of creating shit full time need creative liberty to forget or to create. And I got to just imagine that every outside influence like that is just so stifling and, you know, and we've seen what a Matt Cain, given the freedom to do whatever he wants to do, produces. And if you can't give people that type of environment, and we've talked about 01 like a bunch of times, man, but I feel like that's like a great platform that just has given that ability to a lot of people where you're just, you know, free to create, and there's not a lot of repercussions if shit doesn't go well, but there's a lot of room for experimentation, and a lot of garbage has come out of it if you sift through the feed, but there's a lot of like diamonds in the rough and like really cool things going on there. And I just feel like we had so much of that like really early on, and then I feel like the walls closed in really fast, but these just you know, this culture of like an open playground for experimentation and giving people the leash that they need to just build, create, you know, do things unapologetically. You know, I feel like Matt is someone who's always like, you know, probably identified with that mantra and that like vibe of the space. And I don't know, feels like he was feeling walled in by this one.
Yeah. You touched on 01 and like the feeling over there, which reminds me of like Kick It Nuke back in the day, Hen, where that same energy, that same spirit of like creating to create and like just pure play, basically, which was also very similar to like early super rare, like known origin days. It was like you could collect whatever you wanted at like basically free prices, slightly different from 01. But I heard a podcast the other day, I think it was on Right Click Save, an old one with Die With The Most Likes. And Die With The Most Likes came up on Hen, and he describes Hen back in the day as like the psychedelic porta potty. It's fucking dumping. Yeah. Like everyone's like taking shits everywhere. It's fucking crazy though. We're all tripping out, right? But the result of that is like this really crazy creative compost, right? That like out of which artists emerge, get like inspired, and like it creates this like secondary effect of really fucking cool outputs, whether that be artists or art or collectors getting stimulated in their own way, right? And it's having a place like that, like a destination for that sort of artistic outbursts or artistic creation, and just purely focus on the art. Getting rid of all the other secondary shit like pricing and blah 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 blah, which is important. And it's just been cool to see that emerge, and so many artists and non-artists alike get in there and be forced to kind of put on the artist hat and delve down that path like we talked about before. But
dude, you can throw Scent into the mix too, that had like similar vibes. I feel like I honestly, I've scrolled 01 a bunch of times and feel like, man, if you could just add comments and like some interesting tokenomics to this thing, you basically have Scent, in a lot of ways. And dude, and there's been like a few bastions, like that of just, creativity explosions over the years. And I feel like we feel it as a community when there's an absence of that. And then like something will inevitably spring up and everyone flocks to that for its like moment in the spotlight. And that's why I was like, when we first started talking about 01, I was like, please, for the love of God, don't fuck this up. Like you got such a great thing going here. And it's so, Additional was another one like early on, where you got these platforms or creative outlets that just spring up, and it just pops off, and it's a lot of the same crowd, plus a few more like over the years that flock to these things, but that core community seems to like continue to bounce around to these these creative outlets and everything, and they're just so important, man. And I feel like otherwise we get like really like walled in and like log jammed by a lot of the sort of outside influences and parameters that get like put on people when there's so much money involved, man. When I think in a lot of ways, sort of bringing this back to Matt Cain, like he's sort of a victim of his own success in this capacity, because I think you were saying he made traditional art before this, which I was not aware of. Actually, I would love to see some of his traditional art. But whether it's art or anything, you become like this successful, and then like all these fucking expectations start piled onto you for every single move you make and the thing you do next. And I don't really know how you backtrack from that or walk that back without sort of it exploding and starting over with your core fans that have stuck with you throughout or whatever. Because I just feel like there's so many expectations that are sustainable until like people get pissed and the dominoes start to fall above on like the speculator side of things.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's interesting, man. No, this is all fascinating. I love that we're back to this, though, man. You had mentioned this, and we could probably tie everything back to floor prices at some point. But I feel like this is like reminiscent of like early on crypto art conversations that we were having back in the day. So it's cool that everyone else is left and we're back to talking about art.
Yeah, no, exactly. And honestly, I mean, it reminds me a little bit like what you're talking about, like hoping that 01 doesn't fuck it up, right? That being that digital destination for something super specific. I feel like the whip is like in that same spirit, like this digital destination where folks can just come every Thursday at 12 p.m. Pacific and like know that they're going to have like a little bit of weird fun and like hear some new speakers talk about some cool, crazy shit, hopefully. And then these days get involved in like fun little virtual metaverse game or something like that. Like being consistent and being that sort of reliable digital destination is like one of the most important things that folks can do just to help build momentum and build some sort of audience or something like that. And just be a cool place to hang out on the internet.
No, dude, right on, man. I feel like the whip doesn't fit the mold in terms of like, these different platforms we're talking about, but definitely deserves to be in that conversation, especially with the longevity, having eclipsed like literally all of them at this point. But yeah, man, I feel like it's cultivated a lot of the same community that ends up in these various places, but also that, same spirit of, creativity and experimentation and everything. And I feel like it's starting to get its due a little bit, man. We've really seen, attendance start to ramp up over the past like few months or so. Even in this like market, everything, it seems like the market goes down and our attendance goes up. And a lot of like familiar faces that, are starting to come back at a more regular clip. A lot of new people who like don't know what the fuck is going on and like are naked and shit. And we've got to like, do some hand holding, but it's really great to see, man. And I think you're dead on throwing that into the lump of these like, entities, I guess we can call them, that have sort of captured that spirit.
Excited for another whip this week too. Curious what the what is it, Slingshot DAO folks are going to be talking about. And then who's the other guest that we have?
We got Skaz1, who works with Jigger, who we had on the whip before, master voxel builder. And I won't give away too much. I don't know how much is actually like public information, but we got a field trip coming up some incredible voxel builds, a music video, and we're going to learn a little bit about what they've been cooking up over there. But I think it's going to be something that everyone appreciates. So, no, another banger, man. More gifts from Fabiano and Patricia. The whole deal.
Nice. Love these field trips. Last week, the Metageist field trip. Dude, like looking at all his virtual sculptures in monster trucks, like on an art tour, like so many people commented like in public on Twitter and then reached out in DMs like, holy shit, like that was so fucking fun. That was so cool. Like it gave me so many ideas of what to do now, blah, blah, blah. It's people are really having their eyes opened to like what's possible now, like what's easily possible. Like the toolkit that these virtual worlds like Hyperfy and OnCyber are giving builders and creators and artists is just so much more powerful than it's ever been. And to create these experiences, I'm excited to see what's going to happen like 5 months from now, let alone 5 years.
Oh, dude, I feel like, and I was riding on the back of the Code Trip truck at the whip.
Yeah.
Stino was riding on the hood. A Ballistic Banana was on there. A couple other people who I managed to find on Twitter, but I can't conjure them up off the top of my head, man. But I'm just thinking like this is so much of everything that we've wanted it to be, right? Like we're on like this truck that we're on is built by code. It's a 3D asset that's on the blockchain, right? You can fucking own it. Same with the world that we're in. All of these GLBs are created by an artist. You can purchase them. You can interact with them. And we're finally seeing like all of the digital asset like overlap with the metaverse, component come together in a way that is actually, that doesn't suck, right? Like we had all the pieces for so long, but it just wasn't like that fun, like beyond like really getting creative with the experiences, which I think we've done a great job with over the years. But man, I'm like, just riding on the back of this truck with a bunch of people, and then it's like, get back on the truck. We're going to the next thing. And then, you turn around, there's like, 6 monster trucks following you with like a whole bunch of people piled on. And I saw like 9over0 post something on Twitter. I'm going to try and manifest this. And he was like, maybe we need a party bus or something like that. And I'm like, oh my God, fuck yes, we need a party bus. We sort of did that in, the spot, VoxVN spot a few weeks ago that had like somewhat of a party bus. And so I'm like, dude, this, it's just so fun. And just seeing everyone just sort of like touring around from Metageist's thing while he's going on with all these fucking weird stories about these creatures that he's created and all the things that they're going to do. I'm like, it was so fun, man. I like literally, there were moments where I, almost completely forgot I was hosting the whip and was just like completely immersed in the experience and everything. And I'm like, dude, this is what it's all about, man.
Amen, man. Amen. That's probably a perfect place to wrap up then.
Yes. Good. Let's do it again this week.
Hell yeah, man. Well, I'll see you tomorrow in the metaverse. Man.
Yeah. Good shit, dude. All right. I'll see you at the whip tomorrow.
Peace, dude.
There, man.